Good evening. On World News tonight, diplomatic shifts. Japan's Prime Minister Shinzo Takachi's coalition won a landslide election victory. Diplomatic talks. The future of nuclear diplomacy with the United States remain uncertain following indirect talks held in Oman. Diving bestie. Rusty Hunter is a diver and photographer who never expected to make companions underwater.
From Colombo, this is World News Tonight with Sithmi Adhikari.
Good evening and thank you for joining World News Tonight on Adhara News Channel. I'm Sithmi Adhikari and tonight we begin in Japan, where the Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Takachi's coalition won a landslide election victory, paving the way for her planned tax cuts and unsettled financial markets and increased military spending aimed at countering China.
Supporters applauded Japanese Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi on Sunday after her coalition swept to a landslide election win. The victory paves the way for Takaichi's tax cuts that have spooked financial markets and military spending aimed at countering China. The 64-year-old called the rare midwinter snap election to capitalize on her high approval ratings after becoming Japan's first female prime minister late last year. Voters have been drawn to her straight-talking, hard-working image.
Takaichi had a slightly different vibe compared to what we have had so far in the political scene, so I'm feeling somewhat hopeful. That's why I voted.
But her nationalistic leanings and emphasis on security have strained ties with powerful neighbour China, while her tax policies worry investors as Japan carries the heaviest debt burden among advanced economies. There are so many issues piling up, this voter said. Defence, food policy, social welfare, population issues and the environment. It's overwhelming. In less than 2 hours after polls closed, the Conservative leader had already brought her Liberal Democratic Party more than the 233 seats needed for a majority in Parliament's lower house. And with coalition partner, the Japan Innovation Party, known as Ishin, Takaichi now has a supermajority of 2/3 of seats. This means she can override the upper chamber, which she does not control, easing her legislative agenda. The LDP, which has ruled for almost all of Japan's post-war history, had lost control of both houses in elections over the past 15 months under Takaichi's predecessor. U.S. President Donald Trump last week gave Takaichi his total endorsement and said he would host her at the White House next month. China will also be keeping a close eye on the results.
Thai Prime Minister Anutin Charnvirakul's Bhumjaithai party won a clear victory in general election, raising the prospect that a more stable coalition may now succeed in bringing an end to a period of prolonged political instability.
Thai Prime Minister Anutin Charnvirakul's Bhumjaithai party won a clear victory in Sunday's general election. The win raises the prospect that a more stable coalition may now succeed in bringing an end to a period of political instability that has long plagued Southeast Asia's second-largest economy. Bhumjaithai's victory today is the victory of all Thais, Anutin said at a press briefing on Sunday, adding, "We have to do the utmost to serve the Thai people with our full ability." With nearly 95% of polling stations reporting, preliminary results released by the Election Commission showed the Bhumjaithai party winning about 192 seats, compared to 117 for the Progressive People's Party and 74 for the once-dominant Pheu Thai party. A handful of other parties won a combined 117 spots in the 500-seat parliament, according to calculation of Election Commission data.
We are so quite sure that we cannot win.
Even as results were trickling in earlier on Sunday, the People's Party leader Nathapong Rongpanyawat conceded that his party did not look likely to win. He said the party would neither join a Bhumjaithai-led government nor form a competing coalition. Anutin set the stage for the snap election in mid-December during a border conflict between Thailand and Cambodia, a move that political analysts said appeared to be timed by the conservative leader to cash in on surging nationalism. It is a gamble that paid off for a prime minister who dissolved parliament less than 100 days after taking over from the ouster of Pheu Thai party premier Paetongtarn Shinawatra. When Anutin dissolved parliament in December, he cited dysfunction and infighting between rival parties as making it impossible to lead a minority government. Critical to Anutin's success were his embrace of nationalism and Bhumjaithai's strategy of winning over politicians from rival parties in rural areas, analysts said. Thai voters were also asked to decide if a new constitution should replace a 2017 military-backed charter that critics say concentrated power in undemocratic institutions, including a powerful Senate that is chosen through an indirect selection process with limited public participation. The Election Commission's early count showed voters backing the referendum by a margin of nearly 2-1. Thailand has had 20 constitutions since the end of its absolute monarchy in 1932, with most of the changes coming in the wake of military coups. The new government and lawmakers can start the amendment process in parliament with 2 more referendums required to adopt a new constitution.
South Korea's ruling party and government called for unity and faster legislation on real estate and U.S. investment tied to a trade deal at their first high-level policy meeting of the year.
South Korea's ruling Democratic Party and the government have pledged tighter coordination and faster legislation as they held the first high-level party government policy coordination meeting of 2026. The meeting took place on Sunday at the Prime Minister's official residence in Seoul, bringing together senior officials from the party, the cabinet, and the presidential office to align priorities for President Lee Jae-myung's policy agenda. Democratic Party leader Chung Cheong-rae described 2026 as the starting point of what President Lee has called a great national transformation and leap forward. Key items on the agenda included a special bill to support Korean investment in the United States, which the ruling party says must be handled swiftly, aiming to pass the legislation by early March.
The special bill on investment in the United States must be handled urgently by the National Assembly to protect Korean companies facing uncertainty over the possible reimposition of U.S. tariffs.
Chung said the party plans to move quickly to approve the formation of a special parliamentary committee during Monday's plenary session and push the legislation forward. Another major issue was the planned establishment of a supervisory authority on real estate, aimed at cracking down on illegal practices that distort the housing market and harm ordinary citizens. Prime Minister Kim Min-seok called for a speed battle on legislation, warning that delays to the Special Act on Strategic Investment Cooperation with the U.S. are already affecting follow-up measures in tariff negotiations. On real estate, Kim said normalization of the housing market is essential to shifting the economy towards productive investment, adding that the government plans to establish a supervisory authority on real estate. Presidential Chief of Staff Kang Eun-sik also stressed the importance of rapid legislation, urging the National Assembly to speed up the passage of key livelihood-related bills and pledging that the presidential office will also make every effort to move them forward.
Iran says the future of nuclear negotiations with the United States remain uncertain following indirect talks held earlier this month in Oman. Tehran insists it will not compromise on key red lines while warning that continued pressure from Washington could derail any diplomatic progress.
Iran says the future of nuclear diplomacy with the United States remain uncertain following indirect talks held in Oman earlier this month. The discussions, which took place on February 6th, were limited exclusively to nuclear-related issues. Iranian officials say the talks are now under review by both sides as Tehran and Washington decide whether future dialogue is possible. Speaking at a press conference on February 8th, Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi made clear that Iran will not accept U.S. demands for zero uranium enrichment, calling such expectations unrealistic. He also emphasized that Iran's missile program and its regional influence are non-negotiable and were not part of the talks. Araghchi described the initial meeting as a test of trust and seriousness on the part of the United States. While he acknowledged what he called limited signs of goodwill from Washington, he warned that recent U.S. actions have raised doubts about American intentions. These include the continued enforcement of sanctions against Iran as well as ongoing U.S. military movements in the region. Araghchi said the main obstacle to reaching an agreement lies in what he described as excessive and unrealistic demands from the other side, stressing that any real progress would depend on the lifting of U.S. sanctions. Iranian political analysts have responded with cautious skepticism. One mentioned that talks offer a small diplomatic opening but warned that the risk of military confrontation has not been eliminated. He urged both sides to establish a transparent and balanced framework to prevent miscalculations. Another pointed to Israel's role as a potential destabilizing factor, warning that external pressure could undermine the diplomatic process. He added that Iran must remain vigilant against low-cost pressure tactics aimed at forcing concessions. Iranian officials say any future negotiations will be approached carefully, drawing on past experiences to ensure the country's core interests are protected. For now, the path forward remains unclear as both sides weigh whether diplomacy can overcome deep mistrust and rising regional tensions.
Let's take a short commercial break. More world news coming on the other side. Welcome back. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer is facing mounting political pressure after his Chief of Staff Morgan McSweeney resigned amid growing controversy over the appointment of Peter Mandelson as ambassador to the United States. McSweeney stepped down yesterday, saying he took full responsibility for advising Starmer to make the appointment despite Mandelson's past links to the late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein.
British newspaper headlines on Monday were dominated by mounting pressure on Prime Minister Keir Starmer following the sudden resignation of his Chief of Staff. Morgan McSweeney quit on Sunday, saying he was taking responsibility for advising Starmer to appoint Labour veteran Peter Mandelson as Britain's ambassador to the United States despite Mandelson's well-documented links to the late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. The resignation comes after newly released files detailed the depth of Mandelson's relationship with Epstein, reigniting controversy around the 2024 appointment and triggering what many observers describe as the gravest crisis of Starmer's 18 months in office. In a statement, McSweeney acknowledged his central role in the decision, calling the appointment a serious error that had damaged public trust. McSweeney, 48, was one of Starmer's closest advisors and a key strategist behind Labour's landslide election victory in July 2024. His departure marks the latest in a series of setbacks for the Prime Minister, less than 2 years after Labour secured one of the largest parliamentary majorities in modern British history. Political pressure on Starmer has been building amid a string of policy U-turns and declining poll ratings. Recent surveys suggest the Prime Minister has become deeply unpopular, with voters feeling discontent within his own party. Some Labour lawmakers are now openly questioning Starmer's judgment and leadership, raising doubts about whether McSweeney's resignation will be enough to contain the fallout. In his statement, McSweeney said the decision to appoint Mandelson had harmed the party, the country, the confidence in politics itself, adding that he alone bore responsibility for the advice he gave. As the controversy continues to unfold, the Prime Minister faces growing calls to explain his judgment and to demonstrate his leadership can withstand the most serious challenge of his premiership so far.
Israeli President Isaac Herzog paid tribute to the victims of the Bondi terror attack and praised the federal government's hate laws in speech after his visit to the site. Security has been tight for 4 days visit, during which he will also travel to Canberra and Melbourne and meet Prime Minister Anthony Albanese.
No government jet for the Israeli president. Instead, he arrived on an Etihad flight, the national carrier of the United Arab Emirates. The motorcade, endless. Local police, Israeli security and officials. At his city hotel, Isaac Herzog and his wife spied taking in the harbour, and spying on everything around them, police snipers. At the Bondi Pavilion, he was smothered by security, emerging from under a forest of umbrellas. With his wife Michal, he laid a wreath to honour the 15 killed in December. And from Jerusalem, 2 stones, signifying the bond between the living and those who were lost.
We were shaken to our core when we first heard about the Bondi Beach attack.
The Albanese government heavily criticised after the shooting. This president today far more diplomatic.
I welcome the positive steps already taken by the Australian government to tackle anti-Semitism.
But he slammed the pro-Palestinian demonstrations.
These demonstrations, in most cases, what you hear and see comes to undermine and delegitimize our right, my nation's right, of its mere existence.
And then the moment of the day, the president and his wife coming face to face with some survivors. One of them, Elon. He was shot 6 times and was in a coma for 10 days. And the president met Yvonne. She dislocated her hip trying to run away with her infant son. And again, keeping watch over it, police marksmen.
Hong Hong Kong's most vocal China critic, media tycoon Jimmy Lai, was sentenced today to 20 years in jail, ending the city's biggest national security case, which drew international concern about Beijing's clampdown on the city's freedoms and autonomy.
Hong Kong media tycoon and prominent China critic Jimmy Lai was sentenced to 20 years in prison on Monday, marking the most severe punishment yet under the city's national security law. The 78-year-old founder of the now shuttered Apple Daily was convicted of conspiracy to collude with foreign forces and publishing seditious materials. That ended a legal saga that began with his arrest in 2020. Judges ruled Lai was the mastermind behind what they call persistent collusion efforts that sought sanctions and other hostile acts from the U.S. and its allies. 8 others, including former Apple Daily executives, an activist and a paralegal, were handed sentences ranging from 6 to 10 years. International criticism was swift. Britain called for Lai's immediate release, describing the punishment as tantamount to a life sentence. Human Rights Watch labeled it cruel and unjust. But Beijing and Hong Kong officials defended the ruling.
I think that
saying Lai received a fair trial and that no one is above the national security law. Here's Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Lin Jian.
First of all, I would point out that Jimmy Lai is a Chinese citizen. Jimmy Lai is a principal planner and participant in the series of anti-China activities that have sought to destabilize Hong Kong. His actions have seriously challenged the fundamental principles of one country, two systems, gravely endangered national security, and severely harmed Hong Kong's prosperity, stability, and the well-being of its residents. And therefore, he deserved to be severely punished in accordance with the law.
Lai, who is in fragile health, maintains he is a political prisoner. His family says the sentence is devastating and life-threatening, and supporters camped outside the courthouse for days to witness the verdict.
I really wish he would apply for medical parole, because even one day of imprisonment like this is an injustice. It is harmful to his mind and health. I do wish his family would apply for medical parole for him.
Lai's legal team says it has 28 days to file an appeal.
Train drivers in Spain are beginning a 3-day nationwide strike today, protesting what they describe as serious safety failures across the country's rail network. The industrial action follows 2 fatal train crashes in January that killed dozens of people and raised questions about maintenance, staffing, and investment in Spain's rail system.
Train drivers across Spain have launched a 3-day nationwide strike, warning that the country's rail system is no longer safe for passengers or staff. The action comes after 2 deadly train accidents in January that together killed at least 47 people and injured dozens more, triggering widespread disruption and renewed scrutiny of Spain's rail infrastructure. 46 people were killed, making it the country's worst rail disaster in more than a decade. A preliminary investigation by Spain's Rail Accident Commission found grooves on the wheels of the derailed train and several earlier services, suggesting a fracture in the track may have occurred before the train passed over it. Just 2 days later, a second accident near Barcelona killed a trainee train driver and injured at least 37 passengers. Rail officials say a wall collapsed as the train was passing, striking the driver's cab and derailing the train. Following the crashes, safety inspections uncovered force and maintenance issues on several routes, adding to concerns about the condition of the network. The train drivers' union says the strikes mark a turning point. The union is demanding the hiring of more staff, great investment, and improved maintenance, warning of what it calls the constant deterioration of Spain's rail system. The government has pushed back against claims of underinvestment. Transport Minister Oscar Puente says hundreds of millions of euros have been spent modernizing key routes, including the stretch of track involved in Adamas crash. Spain's Prime Minister is expected to face tough questioning in Parliament later this week as pressure mounts for answers over rail safety and accountability.
Time for a short break now. We'll be right back with more world news. Welcome back. In 2020, a bull escaped from a truck in its way to slaughterhouse and charged through the streets of Lima, Peru. The same year, a squirrel ended up inside a family's Christmas tree, and the video looked like a scene straight out of National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. Then in 2023, rail workers in the Netherlands had to remove badgers after the dens of ducks beneath a major rail line disrupted travel for thousands of passengers.
These animals caused chaos. This was a last dash for freedom, and also a destructive one. In 2022, a bull escaped from a truck transporting him to a slaughterhouse and wreaked havoc on the streets of Lima, Peru. The bull's rampage lasted for 40 minutes, plenty of time to do a lot of damage to local stores and to some people.
I saved you! Get out of my tree! Get out of my house!
In 2022, a squirrel ended up in a family's Christmas tree. Taylor Stading grabbed a broom and poked the tree. It's kind of giving...
You can't stay!
The squirrel snuck in through a loose roofing tile, but didn't seem too anxious to leave the North Carolina home.
Get out! Get out! Get out!
After an epic 18-minute battle, the rodent went out the window. In 2023, this couple got a surprise after opening their door.
Oh, okay.
What?
Vulture in the house.
A what?
A vulture.
Liar.
Swear to God.
Liar. What are you talking about?
I'm scared.
They called for their dog.
Where's Georgia? Is she okay? Georgia.
Georgia.
Come here.
Come on.
What vulture?
Who eventually trotted out safely.
I hear something.
Oh my God, I'm scared.
Where is it? Do you see it?
Yes, it's in the living room.
I'm gonna get it.
Her weapon of choice was 2 umbrellas. Eventually, she got the bird to leave.
Rusty Hunter is a diver and photographer who never expected to make companions underwater. But during his dives, a small white seal began taking an interest in him. Hunter says he's now seen the same seal at least a dozen of different dives. At first, the seal kept her distance, but over time, Hunter says she's grown more comfortable and now regularly swims up to him.
Rusty Hunter is a diver and photographer. It's not the type of hobby where he expected to make friends. But to his surprise, a little white seal seemed to take an interest in him.
I felt one of her hands, kind of just touching me and grabbing my head, and she really started to kind of latch onto me.
He tells KCBS he's seen the same seal on at least a dozen different dives. While she was wary at first, he says now she approaches him freely.
A lot of people do, calling them water pups or the dogs of the ocean.
There's been many a children's movie made about a friendship forming between a human and an animal. But Hunter says he knows how rare and special it is to have formed a bond with this sea creature.
At the end of the day, these are wild animals, and we need to treat it as a high privilege that we're even getting these experiences to begin with. It is a beautiful, awesome experience, and I appreciate it and treasure it so much.
Hunter shares his diving adventures on his Instagram account, hoping to give others the same love for the ocean as he has.
And with that, we come to the end of today's edition of World News Tonight. With the hopes to see you again, I'm Sitmi Adhikari, and we leave you tonight with the visuals from Rio heating up spirits with a street party. Do share your feedback with us via email at feedback.adncenglish@derana.lk or via WhatsApp on 076-805-7933. Thank you for watching World News Tonight on Adadara News Channel. Have a good night.